We continue with our focus today on the deadly tavern shootings that have rocked the country in recent times. In the latest incidents, 8 people were gunned down in 2 separate tavern shootings in Gauteng and Mpumalanga. 6 people were killed at a Daveyton tavern in the East Rand, and in Mpumalanga 2 patrons were shot dead, with scores others injured during a mass shooting at a tavern in Kanyamazane outside Nelspruit. Now, for more on the possible action that can be taken to avert such incidents, I'm joined by Professor Jacob Mofokeng, a crime expert, and Calvin Rafadi, who is a forensic investigator and criminal expert. Professor, I'm going to start off with you. Now, what are the immediate details known about the recent shootings at Daveyton and Gauteng? And certainly, let's talk about any updates on those injured, and certainly what can be done to prevent such.
Well, good afternoon, Hugo, and your viewers. What we can gather from what has been reported thus far, it is that this kind of mass shootings are emerging, and then it could be for various factors. We are aware that it has been reported that extortion economy is growing rapidly in South Africa, that can be linked with construction and the killing of patrons across provinces. One could start thinking that it could be around the same phenomenon. But you look also about the patterns of the times where at which these patrons were killed at Kanyamazane as well as Daveyton. You realize that those that are dealing in this economy, they are really violating the Liquor Act in terms of the time at which these taverns are supposed to be closed. So that also amplify the challenge that we see. We start now seeing that 2023 is now peaking at the rate of which we have seen, the number of patrons killed in 2022. So this is a very disturbing, trend to see that what the so-called nightlife, whereby it really generates a lot of income to the, to the tavern owners. We see that there is a less enforcement as well as the, adherence to regulations.
Now, Calvin, the story mentions that there were more than 60 empty cartridges found at the scene. Can you provide more insight into the type of firearms used in this attack and certainly the scale of firepower involved? I mean, 60 cartridges is a huge amount.
Yes. Good day, and good day to Prof and to the viewers. Yeah, indeed, it is very worrying, and then we can see that, like Prof has alluded, that this is a pattern whereby these things are planned, and then it shows that the people that have planned this, their motive is to go and kill. So we realized, in some of the findings that we have done, that in these instances, most of these hooligans are either fighting for theft, or it involves taxi killing, or even political killings. So what we will say is it goes area per area, and it goes with it goes per area, and the profiling of the suspected victims that are within those taverns. So what I'm trying to say is police need to profile whosoever is in the tavern and whosoever was also a victim. Because part of those, you'll find that some, it's maybe like let's say the Inkabis or the Basotho National, they are either fighting for theft, or you'll find that some are even contesting to be in a political space of being a councillor or your likes, or some are even taxi owners. But they choose to shoot these people at the tavern because that's where the place where they are flat-footed, and then they are enjoying and having their drinks. So it's easy for them, these particular guys, to go in and eradicate and do this type of horrific crimes. Now we have seen in some of these random shootings whereby the Inkabis, they've got a pattern whereby, especially when you look at your KZN, Mpumalanga, and Eastern Cape. That's why we say it's very important to profile even the victims to determine what could have really happened. So what they do in their spare time, or they've got what we call the stockpiles in these check-ins or taverns. Now that's where they all gather, and if there's any of their counterparts or even their competitors or people that want to pay revenge, they easily can find them there. So that's why you see a lot of people getting killed in the taverns and the shebeens, and even innocent victims get, in that particular crossfire. But there are certain people that are specifically targeted to be eradicated.
Now, Professor, obviously these individuals are operating with impunity. We see this in the press and the media every so often. What does it say about the police and certainly a police presence or the lack thereof? Is that a contributory factor?
Well, firstly, it's composed of many factors. I mean, firstly, you look at the borderlines, porous borders. As much as then the BMA has now done is on the drive to recruit many, law enforcement officials who will be able to man the borders. You look at our neighboring member states, their capacity to be able to deal with intelligence, the recording, as well as the enforcement of, illicit firearms. And then you look at the conflicts between these regional, countries, as well as to the Mozambique, whereby it is a feeder to South African environment. Then you look also within, the South African environment, whereby for many years, commentators have been really alerting to the inadequacy of the crime intelligence, within South Africa. We are now aware that there's also a bill that is highly contested now that will try to give the capacity to the State Security Agency to be able to vet, any other entity that they might perceive as a risk. So, then also, the circulation of firearms in South Africa, it is also contested that the amount, as well as, corrupt officials, as well as the capacity to deal with that. So it is about the demand as well as the supply, crime intelligence-led policing, and whether there is a trust between communities as well as law enforcement. We realize the extent to which, whistleblowers are eliminated in South Africa, and this compounded the problems that we are having now. I mean, you also look at whereby platforms are created for tavern owners to come forth, under conditions of protection, whereby they need to be able to highlight what are the challenges confronting them, in their spaces, but they are not because of the fear of retaliation, for those who will be able to monitor them. So,
Professor, allow me to interject. I'd just like to bring Calvin to react to some of what the professor said. The professor seemed to suggest that a certain percentage of these crimes are results of. I think we seem to have lost Calvin. But Professor, allow me to throw this question back at you. You mentioned the issue of porous borders. Are you suggesting that many of these crimes that we are seeing in the taverns, where it's local turf wars, from what we understand, are perpetrated, or the hitmen are hired from foreign countries or foreign nationals?
No, it's about the weapons they are using. You earlier asked, Calvin, the types of weapons that are being used in commission of these crimes, where the patrons are killed. You look at the AK patterns, firearms. You look at, there are variety of firearms that, states has to, profile in terms of per incident, but you look at AK-47, AK-56, you look at the G3, assault rifles from Saudi Arabia, you look at M80s as well as 56 PK, machine guns that are used. And if you look at what also Calvin indicated, the pattern within KwaZulu-Natal where, there's a trade that is emerging whereby, there's a renting of firearms as well as ammunitions. So it becomes a lucrative, business within South Africa, whereby all this, smuggled firearms within South Africa, especially assault rifles, they are really, reaching certain people in South Africa, whereby the market is flourishing, and we are yet to have research whereby, the government will be able to profile these types of assault rifles as well as their country of origin. But when you look at the number of, eastern member states such as Somalia, Ethiopia, Djibouti, Kenya, Uganda, Mozambique, these are the feeding grounds whereby the movements of illicit arms and ammunition is so rife, and it has been done with various methods. We talk about the ant, method whereby, daily one will traffic a particular firearm, but also you look at masses of, trafficking of this firearm, which is not, common, and then that involves, officials at border gates as well as corrupt officials. But also you look at whereby the states will lose, massive amount of firearms in their stockpiles, amounting to, because these are not recorded. Mm-hmm. That's why we cannot know the estimation of the amount of these illicit firearms. But coming to South Africa, there's a booming, business whereby these types of assault rifles, the ones that we are seeing now, being utilized within taverns, are being sold, especially, the feeder being, KwaZulu-Natal as well as the Eastern Cape. So it could be variety of, the mechanism at which these weapons are being trafficked in South Africa. But, border lines are not yet being adequately manned. But border controls, yes, we are putting a lot of manpower, but issues such as corruption and utilization of technology are yet to be things that needs to be, monitored. Also, interoperability of systems within government, whereby the system will be able to be effective, especially when we are now talking about the use of smart technologies to be able to man these types of...
Well, you raise something important there, Prof, and I'd like to just talk a little bit about the tavern owners before we wrap up very quickly. Are they being engaged, or are there conversations with tavern owners on how they can protect themselves or how they can use technology to identify some of these perpetrators? Because they are sitting ducks, exclude the pun, based on the frequency of these shootings that we've witnessed over the last few years.
Well, there are indications that, the research communities are trying to reach out to tavern owners to understand the challenges. But to what extent are the law enforcement agencies as well as the intelligence services engaging tavern owners, it is still, not known. But because of what I indicated earlier, the issue of extortion, it could be that, it's a fear of retaliation from the underworld to be able to, to retaliate. But it could mean that whenever certain taverns are being attacked, one could draw the linkage between what is happening within the construction, spaces as well as what is now happening within taverns, that as much as the police cannot come with the motive regarding this particular attacks, but I also want to bring the issue of what Calvin indicated, and also issues such as drug cartels, the theft wars, as well as the easy way whereby, the criminals, that are hired to be able to kill, they will be able to get away with all this kind of incidents. So it really paints quite a challenging picture to indicate that we are so overwhelmed with fear. We don't really want to paint that kind of a picture to your audience, but the picture is there for everyone to see whether our law enforcement agencies, are they really effective, and whether this bill that is now currently being suggested, will it really fly in terms of giving the powers or the sweeping powers to the state security agencies to be able to vet certain individuals as well as organizations to be able to understand whether they pose certain risk to the society.
Professor Jacob Mofokeng, crime expert, and Calvin Rafadi, forensic investigator and criminal expert. Appreciate your time this afternoon unpacking for us the recent tavern shooting.